Mr. Speaker, in winding up this debate, before we go to the third reading, because we do not have to go to a committee of the whole House because we have come out of select committee, there are several issues which have arisen. First of all, for the public to appreciate what do we mean by trafficking in persons. The definition section says as follows: trafficking in persons means the recruitment, the transportation, the transfer, the harboring, or receipt of persons by means of the threat or use of force or other means of coercion, of abduction, of fraud, of deception, of the abuse of power, or of a position of vulnerability, or of giving or receiving of payment or benefits to achieve the consent of a person having control over another person for the purpose of exploitation. That may sound like a mouthful, but the fact is this, that every single phrase in this definition is pregnant with real meaning. And every word. And almost all of the formulations in this definition of trafficking in persons are themselves defined so that there is precision in cases where the ordinary meaning of the word would convey the meaning that is accepted. For instance, for the purposes of exploitation, there are several definitions which surround that particular issue, including that relating to sexual exploitation. And those honorable members who emphasize that the protection relates especially to women and girls, they are correct, because that is the formulation in the protocol, but it clearly also relates to men and boys. Because even where sex is not involved, but the issue of servitude or slavery, though we may not have slavery here, but you see on television, in Britain, about a week or two ago, I saw on BBC a special program relating to slavery in the United Kingdom. Yes, today, slavery is not just in Somalia or in Sudan, but also in the United Kingdom. There's slavery in the United States. And it can happen here. But there could be servitude, and it is defined, means a condition of dependency in which the labor or services of a person are provided or obtained by threats of serious harm to that person or another person, or through any scheme, plan, or pattern intended to cause the person to believe that if the person did not perform such labor or services, that person or another person will suffer serious harm. And very often, the persons who are put into servitude are persons who are illiterate, poor. Sometimes they are not even mentally well developed. And we do have a number of persons in this country who are mentally deficient. So it covers a wide range of matters. And we have a series of offenses with very heavy penalties. I repeat that. 12, 15, 20, 25 years. Huge fines. 100, 150,000, 250,000, depending on the nature of the offense and the aggravating circumstances. So I think it is important that we understand the breadth of the definition of trafficking and the range of offenses which arise from that definition for which there is severe punishment. Now, the second consideration which has been raised is that having realized the importance of all of these things, we here in the Parliament, there's common ground also that we must have a thoroughgoing educational program, information program. And this is not only to be done by the state, but clearly the state has the leading role because it has significant resources already, API, a radio station at its disposal, a number of officers in the area of communication and people in the Ministry of National Security and the National Commission on Crime Prevention, which is currently headed by a woman who is a professional communicator. She's a communicator by profession. So she would have skills to do this. There are persons in the Social Development Ministry, the Ministry of Education, and so on and so forth. Then, Mr. Speaker, we have the non-governmental organizations who have their own role to play. Not just women's organizations, but trade unions and employers' organizations, because employers are ones who are going to be broadly involved in issues of servitude. A narrow group of them. And persons must not assume that the only individuals in authority would be those in governmental authority. The way the statute is framed, it would include persons who have a position of authority, even in enterprises outside of the formal state apparatus. Now, the police have a vital role to play in this. And this law would have to be part of their training. Their 6 months training, their general training, but there has to be specialist training in this act, as in fact you have specialist police who are trained in money laundering. For instance, at the FIU, we have a number of officers, police officers and customs officers, who are highly trained in the area of proceeds of crime and money laundering. And police officers, male and female, would have to be trained in this particular area. And those who are not yet trained would have to read up and study on the subject to be able to address it. The lawyers who work for the state have to familiarize themselves with this. And the lawyers who are in private practice, because this will pass, and there are some lawyers who work in the field of family law who may consider this to be outside of their province, but this is very much germane to it. Similarly, those who are involved in the practice of criminal law or labor law, all of these individuals would have to be engaged in this matter.